Hello, I'm your everyday average Jonathan. This week we will be completing the Antler Chandelier. I hope. We ran into some snafus. Come join me for the rest of this build. Let's get to the shop and get started. Trying to toss this line over my rafters reminds me of going backpacking with my friends Jeff and Ari and trying to toss our food bags over a tall tree branch. It was about the same amount of success then too. Speaking of being in the outdoors, I collect antlers. Anytime I'm out in the national forest or on my land and I come across an antler set, I will pick it up, bring it home, and I knew that I was going to do something with these. I've collected quite a few over the years, and I thought I'd clean them up, put them in the bathtub here, get them soaked. I was told that putting dish soap and soaking these things and then hitting them with a sponge the next day would do something to them. I think it was a lie. And one thing it did do is it created kind of a nightmare scene. I don't think my kids slept for a couple weeks after seeing what was in the bathtub, but that's okay. They'll be all right. Coming in the next morning, again, I was told that this was going to help. And in hitting them with a abrasive sponge here, the water got a little dirtier, but interestingly enough, the antlers did not look any whiter to me. Oh well. In the end, they still look like antlers. While I let those dry, I'm going to go ahead and get my hardware together. I collect square head lag bolts and lag screws for a purpose just like this. They have an antiquated feel to them, a time of yore. And then I went about trying to drill the holes in the metal, and this was actually really difficult to do, even with a great drill bit, but with no drill press, it was difficult. So I had an idea. These self-tapping sheet metal screws seem to go through pretty much anything if you give them enough. They don't last very long, so there's not like having a drill, you need to go through them. But I'll pat myself on the back. It actually worked out really well on that, and I was able to penetrate and then bore out the holes with my drill bit, as you see here. One of my childhood friends, Phil, he's the guy I go to with any of my questions and concerns or needs for engineering help, and he really tried hard to impress upon me to make the connection between the antlers and the chandelier mechanical. I was going to epoxy them on, but I'm glad that I followed his advice because it just creates an even stronger structure on this chandelier. And I just don't trust epoxy with something that's this heavy. I should clarify that. I trust epoxy actually. I don't trust myself using epoxy with something that is going to be this heavy. Something that I find interesting, and I didn't actually know until I started doing research for this project, is that antlers are actually, they're not horns. They're different than horns in that they are actually bone. And when the antler is covered in velvet, it is still living, it is still receiving blood flow. Once the velvet on a deer or an elk's antler sheds, the antler starts to mineralize, starts to harden, and it becomes basically bone. And from that moment forward, it's dying until it falls off. I thought that was kind of interesting. And this is the last antler that I'm going to put on, and instead of having that antler butt end sticking out, that kind of jagged, harsh butt end, I wanted to give it a little bit of something that was more uniform with the other tines of the antlers. So I went ahead and hit it with the bandsaw and the sander. I think that it looks good. Cutting off the last piece of metal here, and then I'm going to take the ends of the bolts off. Now, we're laying out the lights. As I said, I am not good at electrical work, and this is a very tedious process for me, and I'm sure I made all sorts of mistakes. But if you go to turn it on each time, most of them turn on, and then if I just tap a few of the other ones, like that one right there, just give it a tap, it turns on. So it blinks a little bit, but that's okay. It could be kind of a strobe effect. I can hear my friend Jeff in the background judging me because he's really good at electrical stuff, but look, they all worked first time on that one. Now, I made a mistake. I painted the metal framing off camera. I painted it this sort of bone off-white to match the antlers, and I couldn't stand it. It looked cheap to me, it looked cheesy. So I just went back and I hit this thing again with some flat black spray paint. I guess having the iron structure underneath and showing is part of the aesthetic, I hope. And here I am putting it all back together and getting the lights glued up. Okay, I have an admission to make. You just saw me in fast forward gluing the lights on, putting the antlers back on, turning everything on, and then looking at it. And the admission is this: I hated it. It looked like crap to me. It looked cheap. It was cheap. So what you didn't see, and this is my apology to you, because I said my promise has always been that I don't edit out my mistakes. This wasn't me editing out a mistake, but what I didn't do is I didn't film my reaction to everything. And I took the whole thing apart, took the wiring and the lights off, took the antlers off, repainted things. I put a new weld bead down the entire internal circumference of the spiral to give it more structural stability. I bought new lights, which you're about to see.
see, and now I'm going to put those on and put it back together. My apologies that I didn't include the process of me tearing it apart. It wasn't because I was angry or cranky or anything. It was just because I forgot to film it. It was because I was frustrated and I moved quickly and I just took it apart. So please accept my apology. Now back to the build.
All right, the newest batch of lights have arrived. They are more of an industrial light. They are more rubberized. I still needed to shorten the lengths between the fixtures. They were 16 inches and I wanted them to be 12 inches. Basically going from what would be 8 lights on this fixture to 10 and brightening it up a little bit. I'm filming and editing this section in one take. And the reason for that is I was actually really proud of myself. I was able to connect 2 strands and get it fully functional in under 60 seconds. These really cheap 2-way connectors from Aunt Jemina, the country of Aunt Jemina, work actually really, really well. So I should probably be less sarcastic and cynical when I talk about this country of origin. Now I'm going to start mounting them back up, and I needed to find something to stabilize the bottom of the structure. So ye old gas can was filled with gas, so you know how dangerous can it be, was what I used to make sure that this thing was still hanging but wasn't swinging to and fro. So there are 2 really cool ways to make braided wire, which I was going to use here. One is to insert the 2 ends of a long strand of wire into your drill and loop the other over something immovable, and then just use that drill to twist and twist and twist. I use that firstly here, and then I'm hammering this out. It makes the braided wire look a little bit more interesting, a little bit more refined. What I didn't know was this particular wire that I used. It's not baling wire, which my friend had told me that, hey, you're a baling wire kind of guy. Well, I said thank you for that, but this was rebar wire that you use to tie over rebar. And in hammering that, I actually weakened this wire. It's pretty flimsy, and some of it snapped, so I had to go back and make it again. And then this is the second way to do it. Don't hurt yourself, first off. Insert a little hook into your drill, put the other end of the wire into the vise, and then twist away. So there's 2 really cool ways to do it. It's very, very fast. And I'm putting the last pieces of antler onto this apparatus, if you will, and getting it ready to then put the lights as well on there. Now, turning it on, everything functioned perfectly. I'm choosing a location to hang it by in my shop just to get a good idea of it. It was no small feat. This thing is actually pretty heavy. I was surprised how difficult it was. But getting it over and onto this hook, and then I went ahead and plugged it in and turned it on, and this is what it looks like in the shop. It actually looks kind of nice like this, but as you will find out here in a moment, it's a bit of a monstrosity when you really, really look at it and look closely at it, with the lights off especially. It is not pleasing to the eye.
Well, thank you for joining me for that build. I can't say what it is that I learned from that build. It did not turn out the way that I wanted it to. So I guess just straight to it. I'm not happy with how it came out at all, one bit. It looks like a Frankenstein. The ironwork, the antlers, they're all fine. It's the electrical part that just sucks, and I'm really disappointed. I certainly am not gonna attempt to sell that. Safi, stop. I wouldn't even give that to somebody at this point because I'd be so embarrassed at what they see. My friend Phil told me, make it so bright that they can't see the wiring. And I failed at that. I'm gonna let it hang out with me at the shop for a little bit. I'm gonna look at it, let the simmering disappointment set in. But yes, honestly, I had been thinking about this chandelier for some time. In my mind's eye, I saw a particular thing. It's nothing like what I envisioned. And I don't normally miss so badly when I'm making things, but that's a big miss. But I suspect what will happen is at some point I'll get a burr in my bonnet, or a bee in my bonnet, a burr. Anyways. And I will dismantle it, and then I will make a new metal framework, something like the concentric rings of like a wedding cake, so that I can actually apply the lighting to it in a way that doesn't look quite so atrocious. It just sucks. Next week, I will be making a head-sized coffin for me to go bury my head in the sand. I guess the only takeaway is this: creators, builders, we're gonna face disappointment. We're gonna let ourselves down at times probably, and we might even be letting some of our clients down. And that's pretty hard when you have high expectations and your artistic spirit has gone into something. So I'm gonna go lick my wounds and begin another project. I feel like I should apologize to you. Thank you for joining me anyways. Next week, I'm going to build something called a kiridashi. It's a Japanese implement tool, knife, if you will. It's kind of the original multi-tool in a lot of ways. It's a curious item. It's an enigmatic item for me. So I'm looking forward to showing you that experience, and hopefully I can knock this one out of the park. Until then, thank you for joining me and have a great week. God bless.